So, getting to the actual text, and I'm not going to read through all this. You guys can just pause it and read it if you like. But just to recap, what you're seeing here is what I call the concept strafe. So I have just written purely in quick notes, just straight off the top of my head. A lot of the times I have these little, I don't bother to write in Balian said or surmised or anything like that. I just put the gaps. If you want to know more about it, watch the other video. But basically, for this video, I'm just going to give you the basics of what's going on. You guys, again, can pause it to read it if you like. This story opens up with Balian, who was a carpenter. I called him a peasant before. I'm not sure carpenters, I think they were just more referred to as simple townsfolk or commoners or something. I'm not sure if peasants only mean farmers. It doesn't really matter because I won't be mentioning the word peasant in this book. But he is a carpenter with his new young wife, Sophia. To our modern day sensibilities, we'd be normally thinking early 20s, but in reality, he'd probably be late teens. Both of them probably be late teens. But I'm not going to mention their age for that reason, because I don't really know. So the basic setup, and I want to open, I don't know exactly how I'll open up this story, but I know I want to establish two things, is who he is and who Sophia is, and also just essentially who they are. Balian is stalling on having children, not because he definitely wants kids, but he wants to build them a bigger home. His wife wants to have just kids now. He wants to make it perfect for her. Whereas Sophia, like, there's a conversation here where she's asking him, can't we just do it now? And he's saying, no, it's got to be perfect. Just wait. I'll build us a new home and everything. And what he does is to convince her, and he's obviously done this multiple times before, he pulls her out the door and takes her to this plot of land which they have, and he's outlined the floor plan of their new home in sticks. And he sort of stands her in the middle of the field, holding her behind the waist, and he starts pointing out like where their bed will be and everything. And she says, yes, I know, she's humouring him because he's done this multiple times before, but she just wants the kids. And so move on. The next morning, they'll be praying, just to further establish who they are. They'll be praying to a cross which they'll have on the wall. And Balian will start his day. He'll take bread and ale for breakfast, just a cup of ale, drink it, take bread with him, and they'll be working on with other carpenters and other people, townsfolk, on a large wagon or something, some big project, whatever. They're all together. Halfway through, it's just one of these sort of set-up scenes where life is rolling along, and Sophia and other women bring ingredients for the food. Everyone, because they had their main meals during the middle of the day, and everyone carries on to the communal cookhouse where the bakers tended to cook all the bread in the morning and then just leave the ovens hot. And so everyone gathered and cooked all their food there, and then everyone ate together. And so there would be a scene of them all sitting together, chatting, talking, laughing, and Balian would be watching Sophia running around with these other kids, and she'll just be having the time of her life. She'll be laughing and everything, and he'll be watching her, and she's utterly beautiful, and he wants to give her kids so badly. So that's just further establishing that sort of motive, that setup. At that moment, there's some ruckus in the town, some commotion, something's happening in the town. So they go to see, and they see this guy, this monk, he's not riding a donkey, but he's got a donkey. He's coming here on a donkey. He's got a staff. He's in the late 40s. He's got this sort of long blondish beard, barefoot, and his name is Peter the Hermit. He is the guy who started rolling through all of France ahead of time and gathering up the big crusade. And here's another little very, very short history lesson. There were two crusades. There was the main Prince's Crusade, and then there was the Pauper's Crusade, which Peter the Hermit kicked into gear. The Pope, when he and Alexios, the Byzantine Emperor, when they made this sort of agreement to do a joint offensive on Islam, they had in mind to have all the proper, like a king or someone, organise and gather all the best knights and everything from all of Christendom up to make this joint massive campaign to come down. And Pope Urban specifically said that peasants and inexperienced people need to stay out of the way, they need to stay back. But Peter the Hermit ran ahead and he's building up everyone, he's gathering this posse of just the lowest of the low, because something that Pope Urban also offered was what they called, I think they called the papal indulgence. And what that is that if you go on this massive journey, this holy journey, it wasn't called a crusade back then, if you go on this holy journey, then you gain a remission of sins, meaning you get any of your sins that you've had that you've committed up until this time gets wiped clean. You don't get a free pass into heaven, but you get a clean slate, basically. So, that speaks just fine to a lot of, thieves, and in this case, there are a lot of men, women, and kids, simply because being a peasant at this time was terrible. So, any sort of prostitute, thief, or simply just down on their luck, people who hated their current life, they just flocked around Peter the Hermit because this is God's journey, this is God's will, and they followed him up all into France, gathering this shit rubble together. So now he has arrived in Remy's town, which I don't think I will name on purpose, because I want to keep it sort of everyman. I might have to, but I don't know, at this time I won't name it. But he arrives and he is making this speech from the steps of this, I guess it would be a church or something. And he is pretty much reciting what Pope Urban has said, and he's really drumming up the whole Islamic threat over the last 300 years, all the stuff I was saying before, and the people are really responding to it, because you gotta imagine, this is quite literally the biggest thing that's ever happened in their lives. This is literally God giving them a purpose. Like, this is it, this is what we've lived for. So people are just like, yes, I'm there. They're really fired up, and Balian and his friends are sort of looking at each other, and they're really excited as well. And Peter the Hermit asks, who will take the cross? And they're looking at each other, and Sophia grabs Balian's arm and holds it to her stomach, and he sort of becomes aware of himself, and he just sort of pats her leg and says, alright, he's not going to leave her, he's not going to do it. However, at that moment, the crowd parts, and Lord Joffrey Burrell, the lord of the region, of the realm, land, whatever, he comes in. And this guy is actually a real life character, which I explained in a previous video. And this guy has this particular empty stare about him. He's just, every now and then you'll meet someone who looks like they're viewing the world from a level of remove behind their eyes. They sort of have this sort of stare like this, and they just sort of engage the world from this level of remove. You will have met them before. I've certainly met them before. But anyway, this is one of them. And he's just got this level of remove to him, and he steps up to the steps, and he asks Peter the Hermit. It silences the whole crowd. He asks Peter the Hermit, he says, tell me one thing, Hermit, and I will answer your call. If I take the cross and fight to reclaim the Holy Land from the devil's servants, will my sins be forgiven and my path to heaven be assured? And Peter the Hermit, he doesn't want to give guarantees, but he's just like, assured if you are to fall in battle during God's work, yes. Then Jeffrey comes back like, if I live, he tries to really nail him down on this. And I have taken the Holy Land. If you henceforth pursue a life of just noble cause, then yes. So if you stay legit after you've taken the Holy Land, then yes, your path to heaven will be assured. So then Geoffrey again wants to nail him down. So for sins already committed, I will be forgiven through taking the cross and the bleeding of the infidel. And Peter, seeing nothing but opportunity in this, just says yes. So, moving on to the next scene. All the townsmen, a couple of days later, are lined up to be selected for Lord Burrell's army. Because he's going, he's taking the entire army with him. Because that's the thing about Lord Geoffrey Burrell, in my story at least. I don't know anything about the real life guy because there's no info on the real life guy. But in my story at least, Burrell has done something really, really serious in his time. He has done something really bad, and no one knows what it is. And I'm not going to say what it is. You're never going to find out what it is. But it is so bad that he knows he's just done for. He's going to hell. That's it. Completely guaranteed. There is no way out until now. And he has learned of this. If he does this, he gets a clean slate and he might actually have a chance. So he is pulling all the stops. He is doing whatever he can, and he is taking his entire realm down. He has to take every second man because they got to leave people behind to do the stuff. But he is doing whatever he can to make sure he gets a clean slate once more. So they line up every man in the village, basically. Well, they go town to town, obviously. But then I've got a scene in my mind where the women are all stood up and all the men are all stood up, and they're going through picking every man, and it lands on Balian. And Sophia turns away and just leaves, gets away from it. But Balian himself, he's actually thinking, oh, okay, God just chose me for this. He's actually kind of interested in this because of all the stuff I was saying before about this is the first big punch back against Islam, against these faraway beasts, these devil worshippers, these devils themselves maybe, he doesn't know. And this is the big hit, and he's now officially part of it, straight from God to his chest. He is God's warrior now. So him and his friend Gil, and that's just a temporary name. I don't know if that's a too modern a name or not. It sounds old, so I might go with it. But him and his friend Gil, they look at each other and they're just like, okay, no, we can do this. This is cool. So, and they say that they're just sort of like, oh, I guess this is our lot, eh? And they're Deus Vult. Deus Vult means God's will, which is basically the Islamic version is Inshallah. So Deus Vult, Inshallah, basically say the same thing. The next scene, he arrives home and Sophia is just like she's sitting tense and she's facing him away from him, and he's sitting with her. And this is key. This scene here, if you read through it, you'll see that she is taking a very logical approach in her speech. That has a lot to do with her name, the choice of her name, Sophia, which will become relevant later on in the story. There's a reason why I chose that name. There's a reason why she talks logically here. Because, again, this book is about the way we just accept it is our lot. It is God's will. Things happen for a reason, all that type of thing. She is playing a counterpoint to that. And there's a reason for it, which you'll see in a later video when I get further on down the story. But she's making these logical arguments, and whereas Balian's just saying, but it's God's will, but he brings up the point of the Islamic threat to Christendom and everything, but then she counters with, but they're driving them back. Rodrigo Diaz defeated them in Iberia and so on, and she tells him, I'm safe, Balian, I'm safe. And he's, no, you're not. while they're still around, you're not safe. And even if you are safe, what about our kids? You know, what if they come for our kids? That threat is still out there. This is our reply. So that's how it sort of works. And then he says at the end, and this is essentially establishing the motive for the entire book. He says at the end, "It is God's will, I have been chosen, and this is just our lot." He says it a lot softer than that. I'm not acting it in any way. So, but then he says, like, "When I come back, and I will, things will be safe, things will be perfect, and we will have our family." So that's the establishing the motive right there. That's a meta level thing. You say the motive of the book. When I come back, he's going to come back, and the motive of the characters, come back and we will have our family. So that's the promise. That's the promise the character makes to the other character. That's the promise that I make to the reader. So now moving on to the next scene. I figure this is going to be sort of like not a montage, like it's got like actual text and stuff, but I'm going to be moving through scenes where they're preparing. And this scene, they're creating all these horse rails and carts and all the little logistical elements that are needed for this whole thing. Also, Joffrey, again, is, like I said, he's pulling out all the stops. He is selling a whole heap of his stuff, and he's actually giving these guys arms and armor, as in just a breastplate, but he's giving them swords. They're not just taking clubs like the rest of Peter the Hermit's army. They're actually, he's going all in. And this is purely a thing that I've made up. This is not true to history. Joffrey Burrell is a real guy, but there was no one really taking an army. There were knights, but I'll get to them in the next video. The guy called Walter. But yeah, anyway, in this story, he's really going all out and arming them up and making damn sure he's getting this clean slate. So, and he's just sitting there watching this, and he's got that stare, and he's just sort of watching. And then his brother, a guy called Ducelin, and I don't know how to pronounce that, Ducelin, or I'll say Ducelin. That sounds better. He comes up and he's just like, "Joffrey, if you continue to sell everything, we're not going to have anything to return to." But Joffrey's just like, "So be it." And they basically just had this argument saying, I don't care. And he says, "For 3 years I have been under this torment. Do you have any idea what it's like to know for certain that you were going to hell?" And Deshellen's just like, "Can you not just simply confess?" And he's like, No way, I will not risk excommunication before this journey is complete," and so on. So, Deshellen pulls out what Urban said, that the inexperienced should not, and the poor and the inexperienced should not be participating in this pilgrimage, but Joffrey wants to go now because he doesn't. Deshellen wants him to wait for the Prince's Crusade, which is happening the following year. Joffrey wants to move now because that guarantees him a chance at bleeding the infidel, at killing people. And because that, according to him, is how he's going to get that clean slate. So that's it. He wants to move now. And Deshellen just sees just how dedicated he is to this, obsessive he is to this. And Deshellen's just like, "Joffrey, what did you do?" And he just, "You will never know. You will never know." And then he walks off. And then Deshellen's just like, "So this deed, what did it say? So your deeds must cost all of us?" And that's the end. And then Balin is listening to this, and they're listening to this. And this is a bit of a fly on the wall thing, which I established, and I'm gonna explain this next video. I'm gonna wrap this video up pretty much here. That'll be the meta level topic of the next video. But I'm setting up a bit of a fly on the wall thing with Balin, which happens here, because what he's doing is there's a scene where he's training and he's just hammering at this dummy that they've set up with a spear and a shield, but in his mind, during this, one of the captains or whatever he's calling out, think of the plight of our Christian brothers, and think of their Mohammedans' intentions for your family and all that. And he's just rehashing all that same stuff. What do you say? And then Balian is just hammering because in his mind there's a devil that he's actually fighting. That dummy is an actual devil, and I'll have an actual devil sort of like cackling at him and taunting him, and he's just hammering. And he finally gets a spear in him, and it's like howls out in pain and everything. And meanwhile, but that's actually what he's seeing in his mind, and I'll write it like that, like he's actually fighting an actual devil. Meanwhile, Joffrey and another captain are sitting there watching him, and they're watching this guy just going apeshit on this dummy, and they're just like, that dude. So he gets handed a sword before he just had a spear, but he's actually getting a sword now, and Lord Deshelin is showing him how to handle it. He's telling him just swing it a certain way and stuff, and Balian just basically, he does it quite well. And this, I'll probably change this. This was just the first thing that came out of my head. He asks if has he handled a sword before, because he's obviously quite good at it. And he just says he's a carpenter, so therefore he's handled axes. But now, in hindsight, everyone back then was generally handling axes and stuff, so that probably doesn't make sense. I don't know, I'll probably change that somehow, I don't know. But either way, he gets assigned as one of Lord Joffrey's personal guard. And that gives me the fly on the wall aspect to the actual political aspects of this story, which I'll explain more later on in another video. So yeah, he offers him, do you accept this charge? And Balian's just, I do. He's all in now, as far as he's concerned. So then, jumps to another scene. And now that I think about it, I'll probably change this as well. I've got, I'm thinking it just focuses on all his kit together in the corner, ready to go. But now that I think about it, they probably would not have let him take the sword and shield home. So I'll probably just have just the tunic with the white cross sewn into it, just sitting there ready to go. And he's laying in bed in the early hours of the night watching Sophia's face, because it's the last day. They kneel where they're praying, but then Sophia collapses onto him bawling, and he holds her, and she just mauls him. She starts kissing him and to bed, and so they, and then it goes to the scene with the army gathering. Lord Joffrey is already mounted. He's just sort of staring ahead. He's ready to go. Everyone's packed up. The personal guard, Balian being one of them, is behind the nobles. Lord Deshellin's going. Other horsemen as well. They've actually got quite a force, I'm thinking. Because it's the whole realm, and I'll explain later. And they're getting ready to leave. I've got a scene where she's just sort of like picking at him, getting all his stuff together, adjusting his clothes for him and everything. And she says, like, you look very handsome. I hate it. And he smiles, but they don't really say anything. And then they're lined up, and he looks at her, and he mouths, I will return. Which again is establishing the motive for the book. That's making the promise to the reader. And then they start marching. So that's the first two scenes. I'm going to leave this video here because it's too long. The next video, I'm going to do these next three, like more than likely, or at least those two, and I'll have the next meta level thing, whatever. So yeah, if you like this, like and subscribe, do all that thing, and I'll see you for the next video.